one mysterious stick, a darkened sky, and a demon king ready to rise. How did Li, the weakest warrior, awaken a cursed weapon that even the masters feared? Stay tuned to uncover the chaos that shook the martial arts world. At the start of the story, we see some kung fu warriors soaring through the air like birds. The main character, Li, is having a great time getting closer to his girlfriend, Lisa. But it turns out he's just dreaming. Unfortunately, Li's fantasy is soon crushed. In reality, he's the weakest member of his clan and can only imagine himself as a legendary kung fu master. Suddenly, he remembers it's lunchtime for everyone, and he needs to get everything ready. And once the food was ready, he called everyone to eat. As soon as the food hit the table, his friends dove in, playfully fighting over it. This gave a clear picture of their strength. One of them even managed to catch food mid-air. After a bit, the master's wife, Suru, came in and playfully tossed Li to the ground. When the master arrived, everyone quickly settled down in an orderly fashion. Unfortunately for the students, they had to settle for plain rice since Li's food had been ruined. Out of the blue, the master asked Li, "Hey, how's the food? And how's your training going?" Li excitedly replied that he was just about to level up. His teammates cheered him on, but the master was skeptical. He called Li up for a test of his energy. Despite years of training, Li found himself bowing down in no time, leaving him utterly shocked. Li's journey took a turn when the master's daughter began to secretly back him up. As the master ramped up his strength, others quietly joined in, channeling their energy to help Li pass the master's test. But the master caught on to their scheme and sent everyone flying with a single move. He then informed Li that he had failed the first level. Meanwhile, Liz was discreetly aiding him in his training, knowing that King Young's school forbade her from learning under any other master. If she broke that rule, she risked expulsion or a decade behind a wall. As Li was about to finish his level 1 training, a strange light erupted from the locket around his neck, causing him to collapse. Lisa felt like Li was on fire, sensing two forces clashing within him, but they both pushed forward without hesitation. Li revealed that Dem King had killed his parents and destroyed his village 10 years ago, leaving him heartbroken. Lisa thought that visiting the ruins of his village might help him heal. Although they weren't allowed to leave the school without permission, they decided to sneak out. They soon arrived at the desolate village, and memories flooded back to Li of that fateful day. He and his friend Jin Yu had been on their way home when they saw their village engulfed in lightning and blinding light. Suddenly, a masked figure rushed past them, pursuing the village's strongest martial artist. Li and Jin Yu lost consciousness amidst the chaos. When Li came to, the battle was still raging. The masked man was struggling, but upon spotting Li, he turned and attacked, slipping a poisonous substance into Li's clothes. He tucked away the worm, and when the village's mightiest warrior came to rescue him, the worm bit the warrior the moment he grabbed Li. But even the worm's venom couldn't take down the master. Instead, he overpowered the warrior and sent him packing. After a massive explosion, when Li and Jin Yu made their way back to the village, they were met with a heartbreaking sight. Everyone was dead. They both broke down in tears. Soon after, Li's master arrived with his daughter Lisa and took her away. Meanwhile, all 7 masters of King Young's school were gathered for a meeting. Every 60 years, they held a competition among their students to see which master could train the strongest warriors, with the winner earning the title of Great Army Leader. Beneath King Young's school, an old enemy lurked, and one master sensed that the demon sons were growing in number. This tournament served as a way to prepare the students to fight against their foes. We then see some boys secretly training the Shaju clan girls who typically didn't fight. As we watched, the boys started teasing the girls, but all eyes were on the strongest among them, Suki. The moment she stepped forward, the boys scrambled to get a better look at her. In the chaos, Li stumbled out of his hiding spot, and the girls quickly surrounded him, capturing him in the process. The other guys managed to get away, but poor Li ended up hanging from a cliff thanks to Juki. Juki tied him up with a rope and dropped him from a good height. As a punishment, a bunch of tiny, itchy bugs were stuffed inside him, and they were super hard to get rid of. Li's friends tried their best to help him out, but there were just too many bugs. They even thought about locking him in a hot pot to deal with the situation. Just when things looked grim, Lisa showed up and saved the day. She pulled him out and started taking care of him. Lee had always had a soft spot for her, and seeing her in action made his feelings grow even stronger. He made up his mind to train hard, get strong, and be with her forever. Meanwhile, Subali was gearing up to confess his feelings. He stopped by a lake to seek advice from a dragon he knew. He even brought some food for the dragon and asked how to approach Lisa. With the tournament just days away, he figured they needed to keep things on the down low. Sei had swiped some of her dad's secret scrolls and handed them to Lee to help him power up quickly. Lee jumped right into training, but just as he was about to level up, he started hearing two different masters' voices in his head. They were saying something, and then the amulet around Lisa's neck started acting up, causing her pain. She had found that necklace 10 years ago after a nasty snake bite. When the old master had been bitten by the insect, he passed on all his knowledge before he died, and warned her to get rid of the necklace ASAP, but she hadn't managed to do it yet. Now, Lee was starting to think that maybe the locket was holding him back from finishing his training, so he decided to toss it away. He climbed up to the highest rock, ready to throw it, but a monkey showed up and tried to snatch it from him. He took off running, but the monkey kept hurling stones at him. He finally jumped into the river and began swimming against the current, but the stones were dragging him down. Below, a mysterious glowing light flickered, but just as he was about to dive deeper, the stone shifted direction. A monkey bit Lee's hand to grab the locket, and Lee quickly shoved it away. The moment Lee's blood touched the locket, a stick emerged from the lake, and the sky turned dark. That stick started floating in the air, and the locket around Lee's neck heated up again. He reached out and grabbed it with the stick, and they fused together as if they were always one. The seven masters were stunned by the darkened sky, realizing that a dangerous weapon known as the blood-sucking pearl had awakened. This pearl was actually a demon, once the king's weapon, stolen from him, and he had been imprisoned ever since. The Demon King had been searching for it, and now that the stick had resurfaced, it was possible he might rise from the earth to reclaim it. Suddenly, the stick flew to Lee just as he was about to leave with the monkey. A masked woman appeared, trying to snatch the stick from him. Lee wasn't much of a fighter, but he managed to fend her off until Juki and Lisa showed up and scared her away. Later, while Lee was explaining everything to Liz, he noticed the bite mark on his hand had vanished. That night, the mysterious woman returned to Lee's room, attempting to steal the stick, but chaos erupted when she tried to pull it away. Somehow, the stick had formed a bond with its new owner. The girl thought about taking out Lee to get the stick, but instead the stick knocked her out to protect him. The next morning, Lee woke up startled to find her on his bed. He was puzzled, but she accused him, saying, "You killed me. I did everything with him last night, so just hand over the stick." Her words almost convinced him to give it up, but the stick kept returning to him. Frustrated, the girl stormed off without a word. It turned out the stick could even talk to Lee. The following day, students from other masters showed up at the school, and the tournament was just around the corner. One of them was an old friend of Lee's who had become a skilled warrior under a different master. When he learned that Lee still hadn't passed the first stage of training after 10 years, he remarked, "Brother, your master must be terrible. He clearly didn't teach you right." Meanwhile, Lee was preoccupied with his own tasks. When he spotted Yao in the flower field, he yelled at her not to pick the flowers, warning they could hurt her. Suddenly, a group of horsemen appeared. After Lee fell, the girl told him to be quiet, and when he didn't listen, she kissed him. Once they left, Yao searched for her stick, but Lee claimed he had just dropped her off at home. She slapped him and walked away, but the stick came back to stand by Lee's side. Later, when Lee returned to school, he saw Lisa hugging another student. Lisa had no idea that Lee had feelings for her, so she kept chatting about her boyfriend, saying things like, "My boyfriend does this and that." Lee smiled on the outside, but inside, he felt crushed. To let out his frustration, he went to a nearby rock and shouted, but his friends heard him, and he quickly ran off in embarrassment. While he was running, he noticed some people chasing him, and that's when he bumped into Yao. They decided to stick together and found a cave to hide in. Inside, Lee started questioning the girl about why she was hiding. She revealed that she was on the run from her master for breaking a rule. As she spoke, She kept fiddling with her stick, wanting to grab it, but struggling to control it. In a fit of anger, she pulled out her weapon, but the stick sensed the threat and knocked her out cold. She was confused, but Lee treated her kindly. After a while, he went out to find some food. When he came back, he saw her cooking. At first, he thought she might have cooked a monkey, but it turned out to be a burnt rabbit. Then she roasted another rabbit on a stick, claiming it reminded her of her mother's cooking. Lee, not the sharpest tool in the shed, listened as she shared the sad news of her mother's death and her desire to live somewhere safe. Eventually, the tournament day arrived. Each master had selected 7 students to compete for the top spot, totaling 49 participants. The plan was that whoever grabbed the number 1 ball would advance directly to the next round. As the balls were tossed into the air, everyone rushed to catch them, and a master noticed that Lee was the only one being laughed at for not being very skilled in Kung Fu. Just as Lee was about to grab a ball on the ground, Juki secretly swapped it out, and Lee ended up with the number 1 ball. When he thanked Juki, she explained that she was there to fight and had no interest in advancing without a challenge, so she did it for her own sake, not his dot. The tournament kicked off, and right off the bat, 31 students got knocked out in the first round. We were among them. Later that evening, we noticed Yuki still pushing herself to train. She looked exhausted and a bit unwell. Her master urged her to take a break, but Yuki insisted she was determined to win no matter what. She didn't realize that the other masters were aware of her struggles. In the second round, Yuki took down her opponent without even using her sword, which freaked everyone out. Then it was Lee's turn, and his friends came to cheer him on, but they didn't take him seriously. However, Lee made quick work of his opponents. During one match, some dust got in his eyes, and at that moment, his stick seemed to have a mind of its own. After the fight, Lee announced he had qualified, leaving everyone in shock. In the next round, he faced his childhood buddy, Jing Yu. Jing Yu thought Lee was way stronger, so he let Lee attack first. But Lee's stick hit hard and took Jing Yu down. Jing Yu got furious, accusing Lee of hiding his true strength and betraying their friendship. He was so mad that he ended things with Lee and stormed off. Later that night, Lee's monkey led him to where Juki was passed out by the river. Lee picked her up and noticed how weak she had become. He suggested she drop out of the tournament, but Juki was adamant about winning. The next day, all the students and their masters gathered for the final showdown between Lee and Juki. However, Lee didn't have his stick because he had thrown it away in anger after his fight with Jing Yu. Without it, Lee started off pretty hurt, but when Juki told him to give up, he refused. He was ready to fight until the end because he had always been seen as the underdog. Juki pulled out his sword to finish the tournament, but out of nowhere, the stick came back because it wouldn't harm its owner. It just couldn't bear the thought of him getting hurt. The moment Lee grabbed the stick, all his injuries healed up instantly. Then, the stick started launching attacks at Juki one after another. But when blood started dripping from Juki's nose, Lee stepped in to stop it. In the midst of their brawl, Mandy Mancy showed up. The clan arrived, and a bunch of students rushed into the forest after hearing a child scream. But it turned out to be a trap set by Deem, the puppet master, who manipulated them into turning on each other. Soon, a horde of demons emerged from the ground, taking out the students to clear the way for the Dim King to invade the school. However, all 7 masters recognized Lee's stick as the Dim King's special weapon, the blood-sucking pearl. They seized the stick and locked up Lee, suspecting he might have dabbled in dark magic. But his master pointed out that the kid hadn't been out of school for 10 years. Then, a student rushed in with news about the chaos in the forest. Everyone realized that Lee was innocent since he was being held captive. Still, they beat him and the stick. They kept him locked up, and Yao, who had gone to check things out, saw a chance to rescue Lee. He hesitated to escape, fearing the blame would fall on him, but Yao ended up knocking him out to get him out of there. When the stick tried to help Lee, Yao reassured it that he meant no harm and was there to save him. Eventually, the stick started aiding Yao, but Yao was deceiving it, claiming to be its master. He led it to his father, who turned out to be the Dim Master. As soon as the Dim Master spotted Lee, he attacked, but Yao jumped in to confront his father. She hoped her dad would teach Lee instead of trying to kill him. She made an effort to rescue Lee, But he couldn't hold out against his father's strength for too long. Alone and relying on his stick, Lee was the top student among the 7 masters. As he fought his way there, he faced off against the powerful Dim Master. To take him on, all 7 masters combined their powers for an attack. Lee was taken aback by the strength of his masters, especially when they unleashed the same lightning strike he had once used against them. He realized that one of these masters had been responsible for the destruction of his village, but now wasn't the time to switch allegiances. Seeing his masters in danger, he jumped in to help, and in the process, his energy began to draw from both light and dark sources. He didn't even notice when he surpassed the level of Naosaki. Demare Master quickly recognized that Lee was no ordinary fighter. He sensed 3 distinct styles of kung fu within him and warned that Lee's power could lead to the school's downfall before vanishing. The masters were scared and thought they had to eliminate Lee. Feeling betrayed as they turned on him, Lee realized he was now powerful enough to wipe them out if he chose to. Just as he was about to launch a deadly strike at his master, Lisa intervened, putting herself in harm's way to save him. She got seriously hurt in the process, but still reached out, asking Lee to remember who he was. Lee came back to his senses, but sadly Lee Saab was gone. In that moment, Juki's master stepped in to help her dot. Juki was torn about taking Lee's life, but he couldn't go against his master's orders. The first strike was intercepted by Lee's friend, and the second was halted by his master, who urged Lee to get out of there and never return. As Juki prepared for a third attack, he recalled how Lee had once saved him, and out of gratitude, he decided to let Lee escape. Lee grabbed the injured Yao and took off, vowing to bring her to a safe place where no one would find her. So, what did you think of this kung fu flick after such a long time? Let me know in the comments. If you want to see more movies like this, just drop a comment, and don't forget to subscribe.